minute, man. Don't get me confused with none of these newbie ass rappers, man. I know the game be feeling fucked up, but I've been making beats since 95, regardless if I had the right promotion or not. Word up. Hey yo, I ain't always humble, I ain't always intense. I've had my good and bad days like anyone else, more or less. Probably a lot more than less, or the more of it in a sense. Feel blessed, so I just move forward through the stress. But don't smoke stress, smoke the bombest weed you ever seen. Cannabis club category, certified Cali green. Type of bomb that I keep up in my sack. They give a lot of cats anxiety attacks, there's no denying the facts. But enough about the weed though, I keep it on a need to know basis. It's time for me to cut to the chase quick. So download this free LP, spread it to your friends and family, even to the little haters mad at me. I got 2 official LPs coming after these. So far I'm grateful for the love that's coming back to me. Truly appreciate the support, especially my peeps that had my back when I was going in and out of court. But of course a shout out to all my people that kept the game alive instead of killing it, selling out with weak flows. My crew, anyone that gave an honest point of view. Much respect besides me, man. I do this shit for you, yeah, for you.
Like to play games also. In this game, it's very important to listen to all the instructions, and we're going to combine things in this game.
Yeah. Pop, so suspect. Now as my rhyme surpasses, see visions are overpasses. Some choose to overlook it, they should be looking past it. We hope for classics, we over you whack bastards. So suspects, man, we fall from the average. People try to act like they shit don't stink. They'll be up shit's creek, plus their ship's gonna sink. Now they knee deep in bullshit with nothing to think. On the brink of dealing with the most unpleasant of things. Time switch up, find ways to humble your strut. Just when you was thinking you was the next runner up. Shit out of luck, yo, it's just the way it goes. I ain't gotta stress the rest, all you already know. From a distance, street lights start to filter in. Home from a round trip, had to visit new lands. Back in the building again, back from building with fam. Spaced out, sleep deprived, staring at the ceiling fan. So many things that they said to us when we was kids, but it was all bullshit. Yeah, open up your eyes. They would try to tell us one thing, then say the next thing. So I say, never listen to the lies. Man, everyone's a critic, just spit it how you live, it's how it's meant to be intended. So open up your eyes. It's all part of the game, ain't nothing but a dang dog. So I say, learn to read between. Yo, you going at it all wrong, so open your eyes. Yo, them cats be living life like they got 9 lives, so don't try. I hit very hard for my size 6'2", a little over 185, so get it right. They tough talk is filled with fallacies. Believe none of what you hear and only half of what you see. So please, they can go and try to play the road as positive, but either way they talk with it, we know when they prerogative. Even if they polish up their image with some party tracks, we see through the lies, we ain't even need a polygraph. This is passion, the vibe is everlasting. It's better than the last one and colder than the aspens. Used to be overreactive, now I'm overreacting. Now I'm pissed off, mad at me, and I'm over here laughing. Shit is crazy, ain't it? The game is crazy tainted, but I'ma do my thing and stay crazy fade. So many things that they said to us when we was kids, but it was all bullshit. Yeah, open up your eyes. They would try to tell us one thing, then say the next thing. So I say, never listen to the lies. Man, everyone's a critic, just spit it how you live, it's how it's meant to be intended. So open up your eyes. It's all part of the game, ain't nothing but a dang dog. So I say, learn to read between the lines.
What's going on, folks? Paintover Friday. Happy Friday. Happy Friday. Looks like you guys can hear me. Looks like we got some people there. Vlad, what's going on? Let me get myself organized. Let's get a little bit of tunes straight off in the background. I hope everyone is doing well on this Friday and enjoying the, oops, that's not the right button. Doing well at the end of the week. Hope everyone had a good week. Let's see, that looks like about the right spot. I'll tell you what, I hope you guys were around yesterday. Luca, what's going on? I hope you guys were around yesterday. I really enjoyed our conversation with Patrick. But that turned into like an entire day of drinking. So today we have water and coffee. Because this guy's a little bit hungover. We're going to do some paintovers though. Daniel, what's going on? Okay, double fisting water and coffee to deal with this hangover. We got 2 images to look at today, which is a good thing because I'm not operating at 100%. And they're both from Fabio's Lancia Stratos competition from last week that I'm looking forward to. David, what's going on, my man? I think that's the David that we have one of your images to look at here. In the dish, we have yours as well. So thank you guys for being here. Hopefully everyone's staying safe and productive. I hope some of you guys are working on entries for Fabio's next competition, which is the Macintosh one. And there's already some really cool images, so that's going to be fun. We'll be judging that live on, pretty sure, Sunday. So today we're going to do some paintovers. And we're going to see how Mike works when he's operating at about 50%. David, awesome. Glad to hear that, my man. Okay, so let's get ourselves organized and see if we consult any of the technology gods today or not. Hopefully not. Let's see here. We got a microphone. Those seem to be a little bit quiet. We'll turn that up just a little bit. Okay, now I just need to find the right window. That one. Jake, that's not right. I appreciate you letting me know that. And let's see if we can fix it. Let's turn the music down a bit and turn my voice up a little bit. How does that sound? Can you guys hear me okay? Maybe? Let me know whenever this actually gets to you. And we can kind of tweak it as we go along. But Jake, thank you for the heads up on that, and very much appreciated. Oh, Jan subscribed. Thank you, Jan. Appreciate that. Okay, awesome. Awesome. We're going to move this to a place where it's less likely to be spilled by clumsy today Mike, and get to work. Okay. So this image we have from David, which I really like this image. I like the kind of overall color and feel. I like the overall composition. And David actually sent me some paintovers that he did in creating this, which was really awesome to see. Thank you for that. And I'm glad that it sounds like you found it kind of helpful. But let's get to doing a little bit of painting on this guy. So I think that there's a couple of things to do. In the live stream, I remember we commented on the virus guy. And I think Jason's feeling was it should be removed. I think my feeling was that if we're going to do a virus, let's go for it and make it into like a giant army of viruses, right? Like either embrace it or forget it. For now, we're just going to kind of leave it there. And I'm going to think more about composition of this than anything else. And not really deal with it on like this kind of subjective level, more of how I would make it look better for me, at least. And so for all of these, as is the case with all of the paintovers, these are all just my opinions. Definitely nothing that's like right or wrong here. But more just for my personal tastes or, feelings, this is how I would do things. And I do like to work, even when I don't zoom in a lot, I still usually prefer to have the navigator window open. So I'm just arranging this guy up on my other screen here, so that I can always kind of glance up and see the image as a whole, even if I zoom in. And the first thing that I'm going to do here, we can see that on screen. Yes, we can. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start to paint in. I feel like this image wants a little bit of vignette, just around like these clouds seem to be getting, and I'm not going to add any texture in. I'm just going to kind of darken down the corners. I might add a little color to this, but vignette. But just try to kind of pull out some of these edges so that it kind of starts to force things back in. I'm not going to do too much up in this corner because that's where the light's coming from. But in the foreground and the side, we're going to kind of just, that might be a little overdone, so I'm just going to kind of continue painting it, and then we'll turn it back just a little bit. And generally speaking, half of what I'm doing here, like, is like starting to kind of do some very simple things so that I can start thinking about it. So there's really no meaning to the order of operations here. I'm basically just kind of working on this as it presents itself. This being a little bit lighter than what it's in front of doesn't quite look right to me. So I think I'm just going to darken that down a little bit. I don't like the color that came in. And just kind of blend out that edge a little. And let's just get rid of that like saturated red that showed up somehow. Which we can do by just continuing to paint until it kind of goes away. That doesn't feel quite right. Alright, that kind of sits back there a little bit more for me. Like, and the whole thing that we're trying to do, right, is we're trying to control how people are looking at an image. And so another thing that I think we can do is right behind our kind of main character, which is not just the main character because he's the only person in this image, but also the main character as far as like the focal point. Everything's kind of pointing towards this guy. We have this building here, I feel like it competes too much. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a very quick and loose lasso, and I'm just going to kind of paint in some lines. And this is always fun. But we're going to need this mask, and for these kind of painting purposes, obviously it doesn't matter that we basically just want the selection to be good enough that whatever's in it doesn't look worse as a result of the lasso itself. Obviously, if we were spending a ton of time trying to edit this, or if we were working on the final, we could make these a whole lot cleaner. But for our purposes here, they don't matter too much. Let's just get that leg back. We do have a lot of this is a lot of chromatic aberration, which just to kind of, one of the things you have to be careful of when you're adding chromatic aberration is that with this much, if you were to give this to a client and you added this much chromatic aberration, as they reduce it in size, that's going to get sharpened typically by Photoshop. And so I'm not a huge fan in general of adding chromatic aberration to CG work, but if you're going to do it, I would go a little subtler on this, which is less a critique and more just what I have found works for me. And we're not going to try to fix it because honestly it doesn't really matter that much. Just noticed it, thought I would mention it. Okay, so let's get a whole bunch of stuff here, and let's create a new layer, and let's give that a mask. Bada bing, bada boom. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to grab some of these colors of the sky, and this isn't a screen layer. This is just like a normal layer, literally. And so if this was screen, it would be making things brighter, but it would be making things brighter based off of their contrast beforehand. For this one, because I'm painting with just a color in here, it's actually going to reduce contrast as well. So if we zoom out and just look at like what that painting did before, you can see how this guy gets a little bit lost on his right side, and now he's just standing super clean. Now I overdid it a bit as per usual, so we're going to go ahead and tone it back, but we just want to give him like a nice clean silhouette, and that I'm quite liking. And we are gonna take some of these colors and just kind of lighten up some of these darks. This would be something, if I had a depth layer for these, I would be using a depth layer. I'm just dealing with painting that. We're gonna do a couple of things we're going to grab this edge as well. Mine as well, as long as we're collecting edges. Whoops. I don't think that one matters too much. Okay. You know something? We might want this edge. We might as well get our selecting done. All right now. Let's get this a little bit cleaner. Selecting things manually is zero fun, but I will say a tablet makes it, especially for like loose, quick selections, a tablet makes it so much faster. Doing this with a mouse is the worst. Okay. I like that we're doing just 2 images today, because it kind of gives me the feeling that like, oh, I can take my time a little bit and see what I'm gonna do, and not just like paint things super duper roughly. Okay, so we just kind of, well, that edge doesn't matter to us. Something like that. Okay, let's see what our selection is. Bada bing, bada boom. Love it. Okay. Clark, what's going on, my man? David, thank you. I appreciate that. I had a couple of people reach out to me via DM over the past couple of days saying thank you for these, and that made me feel really good. So for those of you that did, thank you. I appreciate it. And everyone that's here, I appreciate you guys hanging out. Okay, so let's keep going. Jan, what's going on, buddy? Good to see you. It's Mike painting hungover day. I'm enjoying it. All right, so back to what we were doing. Let's try to get these buildings. These ones I think we can actually do with the screen layer, and I'm going to do it in such a way that like the sunlight here is a pretty warm color. So with a pretty saturated color, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to erase it out of this is too saturated, but that's okay. We know where I want it to go. Let's kind of paint it in. Let's tweak the color. I think we want to go somewhere in that tone. Obviously we want to tone that way down, and I don't want that one going into this sign. I wanted that just to kind of push all that background further back. And then we turn it back a little bit. All right, so already I think that it's starting to kind of like, right now we have a lot of things kind of visually competing, and I'm trying to really say this image is about this dude. I want everything working towards that. And so I'm just going to kind of continue adjusting basically like local contrasts until that reads right to me. And so this door, I like that the door is open, but I do want it to I want it to attract a little bit of less attention to itself. And for this, we can probably just use a soft brush. And let's go with something a little bit more opaque. Let's paint it in. That's probably a little bit overdone. And then I'm also going to go back, and I want this edge to come out a little bit more. Right, because you see how like this back of the car is very clear, but then we lose the front, we lose against the background. And I'm also going to get this bottom section. Right, so that we can get the shape of this car back. Did we get that? Yes, we did. Okay, so we're just going to go in here with a little brush, and we'll give it a little bit of texture. I don't want a hard edge there. Do we see how like just like that little bit of contrast brings the shape of the car back? And it's like a subtle thing, but that's an arrow. Again, like these lines are pointing to our character, so I like them being there. I don't think we need to worry about the bottom. I'm gonna go in. I feel like there's some things that are still a bit bright around the edges, so I'm gonna go ahead and continue to darken kind of stuff selectively. All right, I feel like this can be a little bit darker. And even though I'm using this cloud brush here still, I'm not obviously painting in dust. I'm just darkening stuff. Something like that. And now one other thing. Right, so those are like little changes that, at least for me, make a big difference. But one thing that we have going on in this image is if we look at the histogram of it, we have a lot of stuff up here like blowing out to white. Let's see what those colors actually are. I want to get a little bit of color back into all of this. This is definitely a thing that is this is definitely something that it's easier to do by never letting it get blown out than trying to add color back into the highlights, but we'll see what I can do. And we got a question from Jan. Do you analyze the image for your Paintover before the stream or just decide on the fly? I glanced at them when they came in, so I wouldn't call that analyzing, but I did look at it. So like, here are the things that are that jump out at me first, and then other than that, I'm just kind of winging it. Okay, so we're gonna bring some color back. Do we see how like this mountain kind of really jumps out here? It's not an important part of this image. And so I'm gonna paint it. This is something I do kind of a lot. I'm gonna paint it out entirely, right? So that it looks like it's just part of it's gone. Something like that. I'll bring that flare back later. And then I'm just gonna tone it back. Right? Having that clear just draws attention to the side of the frame, and I didn't want that. Okay, so yeah, I'm basically just kind of addressing things as I see them, Jan, but thank you for the question. So to bring colors back into the highlights, I'm going to do it with a curves layer. I'm basically going to darken everything down. But I'm going to pull these whites down so that if I just did that, if you protect your highlights or try to adjust an image, let's do it this way. Let me turn that off. If I just pull down the whites, we can see there's no color. It just goes to gray because there's not a color there to begin with. So instead, I'm bringing down these RGB channels individually so that as it gets pulled down, like right now it looks a little bit red to me. I'm gonna keep pulling that down, and so I am being relatively mindful of the color that's coming from it. But now we have color information in there. And I think we can also saturate the highlights a bit, all right? And then we'll use blend if, because I don't want the darks getting more saturated. I just wanted some coming back into the colors, and then we'll tone that back to a reasonable amount. Now, one of the cool things that this lets us do is now we can go back and where's our level? Here we go. We can go in with just a normal brush and paint in some highlights where we actually do want things to start to pop out, like on our main character. And maybe we get just a little bit here. I could look for a lens flare, which could be nice here, but I'm not going to worry about that. And then we can kind of let just the very edge of this start to blow all the way out. Where is my cloudy brush? We'll just use that. See how that feels? This is, by my kind of subjective way of looking at this. This feels blown out and washed out, and then the colors are a little murky. We're gonna have to work on them just a touch, but the overall exposure feels nicer to me. Yeah, I'm liking the direction this is going. From Daniel, these Photoshop brushes are from the Cintiq, or can we get them somewhere? They are, where are they? The ones that I'm using, like the kind of main ones, I didn't make the cloud brushes. I downloaded them from somewhere. I wish I could tell you where I got them from. They've kind of like, of all of my brushes, and there's like lots and lots that I've downloaded for random things. This little set here, and really only like 4 of them, I use all the time, but I couldn't tell you where I got them or how I tweaked them. I've had them for a while. Having just a few brushes that you like using and you know how to use is really helpful. But it doesn't matter that much at the end of the day. Okay, so some other things. Let's go in now and let's start adding some things back in. I want to take those lights back. So for something like this, obviously like this is too blue and everything else. But it's just like anything else. First I want to get kind of like the color into a place that I like, and then I'm going to pull this down a bit. And let's see here. Do we need to go? Let's see. And see if we can use blend if here to do what I want it to do. Yes. I didn't do that right. Again, like light is always going to change color as it falls off. And so that starts to bring a little bit of life into it. We're going to paint into a color dodge layer. But if it's white already, there's nowhere for it to go brighter. So I'm going to adjust that. That's still probably a little saturated for me for this image. And the orange one is okay, I think, for now. Okay, like the first thing that I saw when this came was like this big dark area on the top left. That was when it flipped. That was the first thing that was like, oh, we need to do something there. So I'm going to grab, what kind of color do I, oh, you know what? I'm going to use just a soft light layer is what I'm going to use. And this brush I need to turn up the opacity for. That's a little bit overdone, or a lot overdone. That's okay. We're going to turn that way down, so that we're starting to get just a little bit of additional texture up in that side. Maybe we add some of that in here too. Do I like that? Yeah, I do like that. What time is it? 1:30. All right. Let's take another layer. I'm gonna grab a little color dodge to paint in a little bit of light. When you're using a color dodge layer, obviously black doesn't do anything, but painting onto black as opposed to painting onto a transparent layer for color dodge, painting onto black will give you a better result because the colors as they mix with the black will give more variation and interest than it would if it was transparent. It's a subtle thing, but I like it. Okay, let's go to a soft brush for this. Ooh. And let's turn that bad boy down. Color dodge layers. I'm just gonna go around that. We might fix that. Yeah, that's grabbing a lot of attention. That's okay. Color dodge layers can be very, very easy to overdo. So paint softly and with relatively dark colors, right? Like I'm not painting with anything. This is almost a mid-gray. But just to add a little bit of life and hope into this guy. All right, I think that helps. I think I got a little bit carried away here. And then I'm not gonna erase with this. I'm just gonna, if I want to tone something down a bit, I'm gonna paint with black back into it. Okay. I like that. That's still bothering me. We're gonna do something with that. I'm gonna do something with this car here. I'm not sure what yet. more worried about the whites and the blues. Maybe it's a color issue. I don't really know. Let's see here. That I think that is helping. I'm going to do it in a different way. I'm going to do it with actual curves, and I'm just going to put all of this in a group so I can clean up this mask after I'm done. But right now, like, even though these adjustments are doing these kind of weird things at the bottom, I'm just really looking at the top edge. I don't want the whole thing to get darker. I want it just the whites to get brighter. So I'm gonna lift the blacks back up, pull this back down. I don't like what it's doing to that highlight, but I can paint that out, right? And then that edge is rather distracting just because it's a high point of contrast. So let's just go ahead and paint that guy. Boop-a-doo. We don't want to paint into the background because we don't want that black. We just want that bright highlight to kind of go away. Okay. Let's go ahead. Now, I don't like how much I destroyed this highlight, so I'm just going to paint that back in, or out, so to speak. Right? I don't want that to feel muted. And then I'm just going to feather this mask out a bit towards the edge so that I don't have a hard line there. I might have overdone that, but this is a Paintover. It's accomplishing the thing that I want it to do, which is making that kind of top edge less kind of jarring. Where's my layer? Where's my curves layer? I think it was this guy. I think that guy got overdone just a little bit. Painting just a few highlights again. This is one of those things why it's really good idea to like protect your highlights, because bringing them back is always a pain in the ass. I feel like I've had to do this a lot for my images from time to time, and like it takes a while to get it to look right. Okay, I think we're getting somewhere. Overall, I'm liking it. Let's go ahead and do a couple other things. This is just a merged layer. I'm going to blur the bejesus out of it. I am going to saturate the bejesus out of it. And then I'm going to turn it way down. And then I'm going to do the same kind of thing with a soft light layer. I'm not going to blur that one nearly as much. And I'm not going to saturate that one. And this just, I'm just like kind of softening everything a little bit, letting colors bleed to some degree. Yeah, and I flip everything. I really wish the frame buffer in 3D had a way to flip horizontally. Maybe it does. Maybe you could just mirror the camera in X. I don't know. But yeah, I do it all of the time. And whenever I do it, I make sure that I'm looking at the screen when I do it, because I want to see where my eye goes, right? So there's a couple of things where my eye went to immediately that I don't like, right? Like this edge is a really strong edge. And so we're going to soften it a little bit. My kind of overall, approach to not just these paintovers, as you were asking before, which, you know, yes, I'm just kind of painting on them and I'm figuring things out. But even when I'm working on my own images, I'm generally always kind of like, what's the one thing that feels like it needs work at any given time? And that's generally what I'm trying to address. And sometimes that's little things like details, and sometimes that's, you know, big things like overall color or saturation or whatever else. This image is looking a little bit green to me as I said that. So we're going to go ahead and go back to green and pull out a little bit of green from the midtones. I think I like that. Maybe we'll just turn it down a little bit. Something like that. I think I would go in this area up here is still bothering me. And I feel like if we weren't kind of about to call this one done, or if I was working on this image, I think that I would go and just find some storm clouds. For now, I'm going to go ahead and like paint in here a little bit and see if that helps me at all. Let's actually give it kind of some actual structure, right? This brush has like a lot of size jitter in it, so it's like a lot of kind of put a stroke down, see if you like it, undo, redo, etc., etc., etc. And this is definitely a thing where I'm going to turn this down a little bit because like this brush does have a tendency to kind of paint things cartoony, but I'm thinking about it kind of from like a compositional level, right? Like how is this affecting the overall shape of the image? I like that. I feel like our shadows have gotten a little bit a little bit too saturated. So we want to kind of protect the highlights and something like this. Right, you could do exactly what I'm doing here with a luminosity mask instead. Just kind of two different ways to do the same thing. Okay, so I think I'm gonna call that. I think I'm gonna call that my Paintover. Yeah, so it goes from something that's like very kind of bright with a few bits of contrast competing to something where I think the kind of main structure of the image reads very quickly. Let's turn it back to right side forward. There is a difference between left and right, and it varies based off culture. So like if you're from Eastern cultures where you read from right to left, you have a different interpretation of an image that kind of generally moves that way. And in filmmaking, you see it a lot with which way you pan, whether it's left to right or right to left. Like one feels very natural and one feels uncomfortable. So I think there's like a lot of things I could have done a bit more carefully in this image, right? I could have dealt with these lights more carefully, but they're not really the important structure of the image. But that's the direction that I would push this in post. I hope that was helpful. David, thank you so much for, so much for submitting this image. I think it was a great image to start with. Those are the suggestions of what I would do if I was continuing to work on it. And really, hopefully, like what came through whilst I was working on that is that the whole time what I was really thinking about more than anything else was like contrast. And like this hard edge, while I was looking at it in full screen, this jumped way back out at me and I'm like, I don't want attention there. And so I'm going to do something to remove contrast from any area, whether it's desaturating it, just like painting darks brighter or brights darker. Because all I'm trying to do is control what's gaining somebody's attention, and contrast is where the eye always goes. But awesome work, man, and thank you for submitting it. I think if there's anything that I missed. This guy here maybe takes a little bit too much attention, but I'm not going to worry about it. Or I'm going to only kind of a little bit worry about it. I don't like that color. Let's just paint out that color. Just a smidge. Awesome work, though. Great image. Thank you for sending it along. Hope you enjoyed that. I enjoyed painting over it, and I'm so happy that you are working on another one, I think. Okay. Alrighty. Any comments? Really changed the total mood. Looks awesome. Thank you, Nadish. I really didn't, right? Like, the overall mood feels changed, but I just was working with what was there. I didn't overall, like, change the color palette or anything else. I just kind of refined what was already there. And tried to bring some color in specific places back. But all that mood was already there. That was just kind of my way of enhancing it. Okay, now we have Nadish's entry for the Lancia competition. I really like these two because obviously they're both kind of in the concept art realm, but they're totally different. Whereas David's was very bright with a lot of depth and distance in it, kind of a big grand scheme. Here we have a night that's a city. Cityscape night, we have like bright, vibrant tones. Yeah, I quite like this image. It's a color palette that I don't work in a lot, which makes it fun for being where I'm at. Sorry, just kind of gathering my thoughts. So my first like overarching thought of like, here's what we need to fix with this. Oh, I should rephrase that. What I would fix with this is right now. So we have the car, which is clearly like the focus of the image. The color, its position, and everything else. But we also have like some of these bright highlights. We have like, oh, that's cool. I didn't realize that until I zoomed in. We have this like, this looks like a medical worker, and it's an ambulance. Obviously, there's COVID going on. It might be a subtle reference to that. These kind of live on the same plane of this image. And they take up about the same amount of space, relatively speaking, to one another. And so there's a thought that if I was going in with this, I might do something from like a compositional standpoint. Obviously the perspective is going to be all messed up if I do it this way, but such is life. I might try to like move this down in 3D so that we can create some diagonals or crop it. But I don't feel like doing that kind of painting today. I'm going to work with what we have. But you always kind of want like a variation in like the relative 2D sizes of your different focal points. And I'm going to try to kind of make it more clear that we have this other stuff going on back here, right? Because we have these highlights, these bright spots of light, but then it quickly falls off to dark. So there's a lot of contrast there, but there's not a lot of legibility. David, yes, I did. If you'd like it, just contact me. Okay, so what's going to be the best way? Okay, so I'm going to do a couple of things. One, A+ for not blowing out all of these highlights. Awesome work. I am going to... This is like... Now the image is very soft, but I'm lifting all of these blacks, and maybe I shouldn't have done it quite that soft. Let's go somewhere in between. I'm lifting all of these blacks up with this screen layer, And now we can go in and paint some of them out. What is going on here, computer? What is going on? What? Is this image really big? No. What's my... whatever. Okay. We continue onwards. Oh, that's not where I wanted... That's where I wanted to be painting. Okay. Way to go, Mike. Okay, so... let's start doing a couple things here. Right, and again... let's kind of start to control where we're putting the blacks, right? Like, there's kind of a uniform darkness to everything except for the highlights. And I want this to have a bit more depth and control in that. And saving it for, like, the places where I want people to really look. Another one of the questions, if you're looking at me working on this and you're thinking, he seems to be stalling, I kind of am. Making these kinds of changes at the beginning, like, they're a little bit mindless. And they take a little bit longer to do than, like, the benefit you get from them. But it's also giving me a chance to kind of, like, really get a feeling for the image. Like, what are the things that are like, mentally kind of distracting me? And by going through and doing this, I can get things to kind of start working a bit better in my head. Because the first idea of, like, actually changing the composition, I think we might actually go back and paint that, right? Because at the end of the day, this is always going to be very flat, as opposed to something that is moving you back into the image more. But let's see what else we can do. This purple here, not helping me, right? So, like, we want to highlight this kind of moment and this kind of moment. So let's go ahead and get rid of it. That's kind of getting some of those colors. These kind of changes for, like, fast stuff. This is probably not how I would make this adjustment if this was a client image. But it's how I'm going to make it here. I think. Maybe it's not going to let me change it as much as I'd like for it to. Nope, not doing it that way. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to colorize. I know generally where I want that mistake to, or not mistake. That what I just did was a mistake. This, like, bright part here, I'm just going to paint it out. I know that it's painting green right now, which is not where we're going to go with it. Even though there is something kind of cool, you could bring some more colors into this. We might do that. Happy accidents, baby. But that's not what I'm going for right here. What I'm trying to do right now is pull away some attention from that. And by having it as green, it's easy to see where I'm painting. I want to bring this back into, like, a blue that kind of matches with the rest of the image. A little bit purplish. Let's look at this. I'm gonna go dark mode on this, so that I can, the dark images with this bright light shining in my eyes, can't see shit. Okay, that is too bright. Let's go darker. That's like that. I like better. Right, and this is all, like, again, just trying to control the attention. Do you see when we take away this bright purple up here and leave it here, it draws the attention back to this. And then for this guy, this probably still got a little bit too soft. Let's just go ahead and let's fix that. Oh, delete that. That's not what I wanted to do. That's what I wanted to do. Yes. I do want it to be a bit soft, just not super soft. And now we are going to. Yep. Okay. I'm gonna grab these guys. Oh, you know what? No, I'm not. I'm gonna do this in a different way. Oh, you know what? Just desaturating. Now this again is going to paint itself much too orange, but it's okay. What I'm going to do. Okay, I want that to go brighter. And what we might do, because the overall palette of this image is cool, if we just desaturate it, that still feels warm, right? Relative color values. But I want just a little bit of kind of yellow in those lights. And I want them to come out just a little bit more, but a little bit more softly. So let's paint a little bit of black. Oops, nope. Paint with black and turn that down a little bit. And then we're going to go into the same mask with just like a soft brush. We're going to paint out our little guys here, right? Because they wouldn't be getting as much light in front of them. There would be a little shadow. Let's try to get a little bit of him out. He might be a little too saturated, but we can kind of deal with them. Dun, 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 dun. Ugly selections. Okay. And then let's just take this. Right, you see how, like, let me see here. All these changes back in that little corner. See how they bring out what's going on? Hopefully you can, like, it starts to make them pop a little bit. And like we're losing the top of this guy's silhouette, so I'm just gonna make another dirty selection and do the exact same thing with him. And what I'm basically, like, from like an image standpoint, what I'm saying by pulling out these guys silhouettes is that these people are important, right? That was a little bit too much. So that's a little, you know, it was not the nicest way I've ever done anything, but I'm okay with it. Let's see what else we can do without completely moving this car. What if we just a little bit move this car? Oops. I feel like if I had more energy, I would paint moving this car. I really don't like how these are on the same visual level from a composition standpoint. Oops. So now I don't want to use clear. Thank you. Now, one thing, if we crop this down significantly, you still are getting this feeling. So what I'm kind of fighting with here, and I apologize I'm not being particularly clear about what I'm doing, because I'm not entirely sure what I'm doing, but what I'm still kind of fighting with is this. These are the two main parts to this visual story to me. We have like the ambulance and, you know, these two having some kind of interaction, and the car, and I just don't like that they're on the same visual plane. Cropping it reduces that a bit because, relatively speaking, they're not now taking up more of kind of the visual up and downs. That's not doing. Okay, let's just go back. And then we lose like the cool kind of up and down of things. Oops. And there is like the overpass is cool. I like that overpass. So I don't want to get rid of that just to fix this. I would say move this car a little bit. In 3D, re-render it, and then re-Photoshop it. But some of the other things that I think that we can do here, I think there's two other things that are kind of jumping out at me and bothering me just a smidge, and I'm going to try and fix both of them now, which is I want to give I want to try and these are headlights, and so they would have like a light beam coming out of them, right? But that's just, I do want to add that, but then it's just adding another horizontal line here, right? Which is not what the line that I want. I feel like I started this one by editing, and I should have started with painting, but it's too late to go back. Such is the way that things go. So we're going to continue just kind of editing. And like for me, I guess maybe that's worth explaining a little bit. For me, the difference between the two is that if I'm going in, like these changes are changes that you could make on a final image. If I'm going in to one of my own images that I feel like it's not figured out yet, I'll go into 3D and just, or go into, take a test render, go into 2D, and I'll just paint over it to try to figure out what to do in 3D as opposed to trying to like adjust things in 2D to finish them. My words aren't good today, but maybe that made a little bit of sense. And this one I definitely started with more of a kind of like fix it in post type of mentality of painting, and not a these are always hard, and not a we're gonna paint it and then go back in 3D and render it. So that was my mistake. That would be where it would be nice if I did a little bit more planning for these, but such is life. We're just gonna keep going with the time that we got. What we're gonna do? Color dodge. Boop. Fill that bad boy with black. I want this smoke in the background to read as though the brake lights are hitting it. And that kind of works. That's a crappy job, Mike, but whatever. Life is gonna go on. And it's too strong. Sorry. Thinking. Yeah, because the other thing we could have instead of highlighting these guys in the back, we could have, like, there's a homeless guy here in the foreground. We could have done him, right? Let's see what happens really quickly if we bring out him a bit. And this is one of those questions of, again, I feel like it's taken me longer to kind of figure out my position on this than it should have. But we have to ask ourselves this question with this image. We have to ask ourselves, what is this image about, right? When we look at this image, it's kind of about the car, but the car is taking up a very small amount of the frame. So the car needs to move, I think, period. But is it about the relationship with the car and the homeless guy, right? Is it about the ambulance here in the background? I think one of the things that a lot of you see this more of a problem in ArcViz than you see it in like concept art. We need clarity of what an image is about at any given time. And then once we have that, if this is about the car, let's make the car bigger and give it a more kind of like prominent role within the frame. If this is about the ambulance in the back, let's get it so that there's a dialogue happening across the image. There's nothing, besides the fact that I like this overpass, there's nothing, that's a whole lot of space that's not really adding to like the story of the image. And so you always want to have like kind of a clear intent. This purple light is very strange, I'm just realizing. And this homeless guy, again, we have all the kind of like visual focal points in this tight little section on the image as opposed to pulling you across it. This purple light is strange. I'm going to try a couple other things here. Well, we're at about our time, but we're going to continue. We're going to take this color, which is in this, the magentas, selective color. Let's go to magentas. Let's add some blues into that. Let's pull out some magentas. Let's do something like that. Take that, and then we're going to go in and we're going to color in some blues. Because we're a little all over the place. And the fog in front of this car looks like smoke, and there's nowhere that smoke is coming from. I'll turn that light back off. I'm wondering if we get a little bit more. Right, if we're gonna go cyberpunk colors, let's go cyberpunk colors. Kind of saw this at the beginning a little bit. I'm not sure if I'm gonna say that I like this or not. But we're about to find out. This probably makes no sense. It's going to make sense in a second. Well, hopefully it will. So we're blowing out all of the background a whole lot, but that's okay at the moment. We're trying to... I'm just looking at everything besides this crazy bright stuff. And I'm just trying to... and then we can just paint him with black to get rid of all of the things that got super blown out that weren't supposed to. I actually kind of like it blowing them out. I'm going to leave that, and then obviously we're going to tone this back down. We don't want that going. And we're going to tone those colors down a little bit. I like that it's actually blowing out behind here. Let's bring it down on the car a little bit because we're losing him. Is this door open? That's a strange thing. I don't know why the door's open. I would close that so that you can get like a clean silhouette edge of the car. But it doesn't really matter for this. It's a little strange. Then what was adding color in this guy? We're going to turn that down just a little smidge. That got overdone. And yeah, this one's kind of doing a lot of guessing kind of on this one. But such is life. Life goes on. Tone that down just a little bit. Boop-a-doop-doo. Where is that edge coming from? I don't know what that was doing. We'll delete it. This isn't there yet for me, Nadeesh. But I hope that you're kind of seeing what I'm struggling with. Let's do one more thing before... Now we're kind of running long. Let's do one more little exercise with this one to see if we can't get a better answer. Kind of have a little bit of a weird thing going on here, which is now we have these coming into green lights. We should fix that in... Which layer is that happening in? This layer. Let's go and grab maybe that color. Let's fix those guys just a smidge. There we go. Let's let these glow a little bit. We kind of have to keep in mind too, like if we're going with like the idea that we have all of this volumetric light, that's going to affect the whole image, as opposed to like right now it's just kind of reading in some spots. So I like going softer with everything. Obviously this is super like loosely done. And we're blowing out some highlights. It's what it is. I think that's the direction. I think what you really need to do is just bring this car forward. If you bring the car down, and maybe the camera down a little bit so that you have this, so that you end up having what you really want is something where this car is taking up a space that's more like this, and these guys are up here, so that you have it moving across the image as opposed to kind of just sitting in this one singular frame. And I think that is going to drive more of this idea of there being a foreground, a midground, and a background, as opposed to all of this right here kind of just giving you a midground. This Paintover wasn't the most successful. It kind of points to some of the things that I would do, but I think that this is a 3D issue. Either way, folks, it's past our time. I feel like I need a nap. Probably need more water. I hope that that was helpful, Nadish. Thank you for sending along your image. Great work. I dig the vibe. I dig a lot of things that are happening. I think we can just crisp up the composition. I wish I had started this with an actual like paint over and not an editing paint over. But you know, you win some, you lose some. Life goes on. That's the way it goes. Hope you guys enjoyed it. For those of you that tuned in late for the first one, we worked on David's image for this same competition, and we went from something like this to something like that. Both of them are great images. Thank you, Inadish. Thank you, David, both for sending these along. They were a lot of fun to paint over. Yeah, I'm not sure what we're going to be doing tomorrow. I'm just barely keeping my head together right now. But I'll be back at the same time tomorrow with something fun to do. If you guys would like me to do any paintovers of any of your work, send them along. Contact me on like Instagram via DM is probably a good way to do it, on Droki. And we'll go from there. Thank you guys again. Have a wonderful rest of your Fridays. If you're not hungover, go out and have a drink. Or no, stay in and have a drink. Yeah, that's what I got. Thanks, guys, for checking it out. I very much appreciate you being here. I appreciate the kind words that you've been sending me. Very much appreciate that. And I will be back tomorrow. Please share with your friends. All right, guys. Time for some water. Maybe a little bit of aspirin and ibuprofen. One of the two. One of them days. Alrighty, dudes. Talk to y'all soon. See you tomorrow. I'm out.